Good evening, everyone. Just a couple of minutes before we kick off. If you haven't already, if you can grab your copy of your First Steps to Manager booklet, because we're going to be referring to that quite a lot during the webinar this evening. So grab a cuppa and your First Steps to Manager, and we'll be starting in about a minute or two. Thanks a lot. John's already busy on the chat. Can you just pop in the chat box, John, if you can hear me loud and clear? You can probably hear my dog barking in the background as well. Thanks, John. Okie dokie. Let's get cracking. It's 8 o'clock. Sunday evening can only mean one thing. It's the rolling program. It's week 4 of the 6-week rolling program. We've got a few regulars on. As always, there's the people who are here week in, week out, who are keen to learn and keen to build their business. We've also got a couple of new people, so welcome to you. Well done for getting on. Webinars are just a really nice, easy way to learn. So you can relax, you're not going to get pounced on. There's opportunities for you to chip in if you want to, or ask questions through the chat box, but you can more or less just sit back with your First Steps to Manager booklet that hopefully you've got with you. And I'm going to talk you through this week's topic, which is all about making contact with people. So I think I know pretty much everyone. Just looking at the list here, if there's anyone I don't know, and whether I need to introduce myself formally or not. No, I think everyone knows me. Just in case I missed anyone, my name's Mike Butterworth. My partner, Lindsay Jackson, we run the business together. It's my turn to do the webinar this evening, so I'm going to talk you through what I think is a critical part of the business, and it's the part of the business which, if you avoid, you're only ever going to have a retail business. If you actually want to build a residual income, something that you can afford to retire on, you're going to have to build a team. And that actually means that you're going to have to possibly step out your comfort zone slightly and share information, not just about the products, but you're going to have to share some information about the opportunity. Now, you guys have all experienced this firsthand because you're in the business. So somebody has already done this process with you. They've offered you information and taken you through the business cycle. So it should be fairly familiar, or you may have a few aha moments when you realize, oh, that's what they were doing when they were showing me this, or that's what they were doing when they were trying to pin me down to a time or a place or a meeting or whatever. So it should all feel fairly familiar. My background's actually physio. I was a physio for 15 years, then went from physio into DVD distribution to do with Pilates and fitness DVDs. And the last 8 years I've been building the Forever business with my wife, Lindsay. So that's my background in brief. Let us crack on. Those are the topics we're covering tonight. I'm going to be talking about profiling It sounds a little bit kind of, I don't know, like a detective or something, but we're going to do a bit of talking about profiling. Going to talk about actually making contact with people, not necessarily by phone. We used to call it making the call, but obviously there's 101 different ways you can actually make contact with people. So we'll cover that to some extent today. The one-to-one is going through the various different ways you can actually share initial information with somebody about the business opportunity. And then you've got to be prepared to handle questions. Again, we used to call them objections, but what I've learnt over the years is that whenever you're getting questions, it's actually a really, really good thing, because it shows that people are interested in what you're talking about. If they have no questions, it's probably that you've not struck the right chord, or it's not the right opportunity for them, unless they're actually just clambering to sign the form and get started. But let's view questions as a good thing, as an indication of wanting to get more knowledge. I think in sales they call it a buying sign when people have questions, so that's how they view them. So let us crack on and have a look. For you, I think that is page 20 in your manual. I'm going to turn my camera off. I'm not sure if it's on or not, but our signal is not fantastic, so I'm going to maintain good audio, hopefully, and just talk you through this page here. So if you're at page 20 already, you're ahead of me. Let me get to page 20. So what is profiling? Well, profiling is basically just spending 2, 3, at the most 5 minutes thinking about one of the people who are on your Who Do You Know list. So in previous weeks, we've talked about developing a list of contacts, that database that is individual to you. So you've chosen a handful of names to profile. Now you can do that in 101 different ways. Some people do it alphabetically. They just start at the top of the list and work down, which is a really good way to do it. Other people cherry pick, and that is perfectly fine, as long as you're aware who you're cherry picking and why, because you might actually become aware that you're avoiding certain people for certain reasons. So just be aware of who you're choosing and why. In the beginning, it doesn't matter. Let's just start profiling and start sharing information. Why do we do it? Well, the key reason we spend some time profiling a person is so that we can, for a moment, try and step into their shoes, think about their life, think about their situation, and try and get into their shoes so we can understand why potentially there might be a reason they would look at what we're doing. So you're actually thinking about them. And I think it's really important in the early days, particularly if you're nervous about contacting people. Those feelings of nerves often focus around what you're thinking about yourself. And I think it's really important and actually helps with making the whole process more comfortable and more fun. If you stop thinking about yourself and take yourself out the equation and just start thinking about the prospect. What they're doing work-wise, have they got family commitments? Is there anything you know about them particularly which you think might endear them to looking at our opportunity? So the how we do it is on page 20. And if you basically fill in the tick boxes and the various questions here that you're asked to contemplate, pretty much you'll have all the information in front of you so that you can then think about the best way to offer information to that person. So you've got the name, the telephone number, the address, the occupation, marital status, all the usual bits and bobs that you'd have on any form. But you've then got some tick boxes. Things like self-employed, outgoing, people person, open-minded, professional, successful, confident, dissatisfied, local, caring, other. Now, in essence, zip through these without too much thought. Don't overthink these questions. So outgoing, general kind of feeling, yes, no, just a gut instinct, tick or cross. And in essence, the more ticks you get in these boxes, the more likely are you're going to have a fit for what we have to offer. Now, they might not see it. It might take them a while to actually see what you can see. But for your own confidence, lots of ticks in this particular form is a good thing. However, some of our best team members, if I were to go through this tick sheet, might have only 1 or 2 ticks, and they've turned out to be fantastic business owners. So don't hang too much on it, but it's a process which will help you with the next stage of what we're going to talk about. And then in the notes section, this is just anything you know particular to that person that you think is relevant. So if you know there's a friend of yours who's a bit of a wide boy and he's desperate to have a flashy new car, then put that down, because that is what we call a hot button, something that you know about the person that you know you'll be able to help with. Or if you know somebody's saving for a holiday or a deposit on a house, or if you know they hate their job, anything of that nature is going to help us in this profiling phase. So that's it. What I wouldn't do is just profile one person and then psych yourself up to make the call, because you can bet your bottom dollar that the first person you call won't pick up the phone, or they're out, or the telephone number's wrong, or whatever it is. So I always suggest profiling batches, and I do at least 10, 15, maybe 20 profiles, and then you've actually got a chunk of work that you can crack on with if you want to start making some contacts. So making contact. Now it does say there just below making contact, making the call, and I alluded right up front that you may choose not to do it by phone. How else could you make that contact? Well, there's doing it face to face, and there are also, I guess, various platforms where you could send a message, whether that be email or messenger or text, to name but a few, or I guess through any of the other social media messaging systems. Making a call is probably the best way to do it, because you can get some feedback from the person, because often it's not the words that people use, it's the tone with which the people use those words that you can actually learn quite a lot. However, I think from my point of view, and it's about thinking about the person rather than yourself, the best way to go about making contact is to think about how you would normally make contact about anything with that person. So if your best mate, if you never speak by phone, if they get a telephone call from you, they're going to think that's a bit odd, a bit weird. If you always communicate face to face or by messenger, that would be the correct way to share the information. So that would be my personal top tip, is for you to think about each of those people you've profiled and just indicate somewhere on that profile form just their preferred method of communication. And then you're going to tailor your message to that mode of communication. So if it is face-to-face or it is by telephone call, you've probably got a higher word count when you're thinking about how many, what you're going to say to them. If it's by text or messenger, you're probably going to keep your message briefer, but the structure will be the same. So this is what we do. We've profiled them, and we've got to decide what our objective is. Are we wanting to actually try and get a physical meeting, or are we going to try and get them to look at a website or maybe look at a video link? But whatever your objective is, you've got to be clear before you make the contact. Otherwise, it might not go to plan. It might not go to plan anyway, but it's always good to have the objective clear if you can. You've got to be aware of all the different ways you can actually meet that objective. So if it is that you want to show them a one-to-one, and the company have produced a really concise, nicely put together one-to-one, you can obviously do that in a variety of different ways. There are some printed paper versions. You can download it onto your computer, so you can do it face-to-face in a coffee shop on a laptop or an iPad. But obviously you can also use, if you subscribe to Forever Knowledge, there is a platform where you can do a screen share as well and actually share the same presentation. So again, just be aware of the variety of tools that are at your fingertips, so that you can be quite nimble when people are talking to you and giving different responses to the offer that you make. You're going to plan your words, and we have specific pages in the First Steps to Manager to help you with that. I call them scripts. I think they're referred to as scripts in the First Step to Manager. Don't worry about the word script, because believe me, if your ability to read on the hoof is anything like mine, you're not reading it word for word. It's really just a structure to get you thinking about what you may or may not say. If you can read, really fluently, and it doesn't sound like you're reading off a piece of paper, then by all means read it word for word. But for most of us, the script is just a loose structure that allows us to plan it in our head, and then we go ahead and if you're doing it by phone, pick up the phone and make the call. For a lot of people, standing up and smiling while you're doing the interaction can help a lot. You can actually hear a smile for sure. If people are very down in the dumps, it comes across very clearly on the phone. Also, if you're nervous, that can come across quite clearly on the phone. So I think if you're better standing up and walking around, then that's obviously the best thing to do. You may actually find you're more comfortable making calls where it's ultra quiet, or you may actually feel more comfortable and more natural if you're on your mobile and you're out and about in the city centre. It's entirely up to you. Key thing is getting to the point. I would avoid at all costs the chatty, haven't spoken to you for 20 years, having a great big long catch up, and then lobbing in the hand grenade at the end, which is, oh, by the way, would you like to look at this opportunity? It's just a really bad way to go about making a call. So even if it is somebody who you haven't spoken to for quite a long time, I would be really upfront and just say, look, I haven't spoken in ages. It would be great to get together, catch up about the old times. But this is actually a worky call. I was wondering if you had a couple of minutes just to float something with you, and actually frame it both as a brief call and a business call. We've already talked about thinking what's in it for them, and that is absolutely key. If you're thinking, how can I get this person into my team for my benefit, it's going to leak out, and it's just not going to be a good call. The whole ethos of multi-level marketing is about helping people get from the opportunity what they want. So if it's a couple of £100 and that's what they want, our job is to help them achieve that. If they want to replace a six-figure income, it's our job to help them achieve that. So always be thinking about what is in this opportunity for the person that you're talking to, and keep your objective in mind. So, talking about keeping it brief, I think I need to speed up a bit. How are we doing for time? Not bad, 20 past. So, if you want to flick now across to page 24 in your first steps to manager, because this is where you're going to plan broadly what you're going to say to people if you're on the phone or by Skype or a verbal one-to-one kind of delivery. And obviously, if you're doing it by text or email, you've got more time to actually get the words exactly how you want them. But how you start, and I'm going to do this as if it's a telephone call. If you're actually going to use any of these different ways of presenting the opportunity to people, the start and the finish is always the same. So you can see
Mike.
Hello.
Mike, sorry, sweetheart, you've gone extremely quiet. Are you away from your microphone?
No, I am in exactly the same place.
Oh, you've gone extremely quiet.
Ooh.
I'm just wondering if you're...
I may have a child playing on a device upstairs, or give me 30 seconds.
Okay, hun. No worries.
Have a holler, and then we'll try and keep the show on the road.
Yeah, what I was going to suggest, if anyone's got any questions that they want to put in the chat box on what they have, any questions that they've got so far, or if you've got any questions that you'd like to be asking towards the end of the webinar on anything you want to ask about making contact. Maybe you've tried some calls recently and you may want to ask a little bit of a different question on how they've been going, or how to answer any specific questions that you faced. So if you want to pop that in the chat box while Mike's coming back, we can take those up a little bit later.
I'm back, Tracy. I don't know how I'm sounding.
It is quite quiet. Phil can't hear you at all.
Okay.
How's everybody else? Can you hear him? Or is he very quiet?
Very quiet.
He is very quiet.
Very quiet.
Dowie can't hear you. You're still very quiet. That's really weird.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Trace, do you want to do the next slide?
This sharing the opportunity?
Yeah, because we've only got this slide and the next, and then Alison was going to do a stint.
Okay, great. No worries. No worries. We'll do that. Okay, it's just as well, actually, that we've got a contingency plan, isn't it? Okay, so I don't want to spend... Oh, I don't know how Mike was going to approach this, but I would suggest that we look at those 5 approaches, because Alison is probably going to come on and give you a couple of examples of how she has been conducting her making the contacts over the last couple of making her contacts over the last couple of weeks. But there's a lot of different approaches that you can actually think about, and you will find all of these approaches in your first steps to manager book. So it could well be that you may want to use the personality or character approach, and that will be actually when you've profiled somebody, when you start to tick those little boxes, that will actually give you the words to actually say when you actually phone. So it could well be that you pick out the words. I've no idea if this is going to be of any interest to you, but the reason I've called you is because you're outgoing, you've got a great personality, you're friendly, you're a people person. So you see where I'm coming from there? You are actually honing in on the personality and those characteristics that you've actually highlighted. It could well be that you want to think about, when you profile, the hot button. What do we mean by that? It's actually a button. I always say it's actually a button that you can press with them. So it could well be, once you start to profile them, it could well be, if it's somebody that you know very well and they've always said to you, oh, Jeremy, I've always really wanted to work together. I've never come up with a business theory yet that we can do, or a business concept, but I'd really love and relish the opportunity to work together. That's a hot button. Or it could well be that they've always said to you, I'd really love to put my children into private education, but I can't afford it. That's a hot button. Or it could well be that, you've always wanted to maybe work 3 days a week, not 5, so you can spend more time with the children. That's a hot button. So it's almost having those big ears on, and if you know a lot about them, you may well know some hot buttons that you can actually start to press when you start to make when you start to get into conversation and make the contact with them. Or it could well be that you use the value your opinion or help approach. And we love to use this actually if there are people that maybe we call people on our chicken list. So maybe people that we perceive to be more successful than ourselves. So we might want to then use that value your opinion approach. So it may well be that you are taking the approach of, well, I've no idea if it's going to be of interest to you, but do you know what? I'd really love to get together over a cup of coffee for 30 minutes because I really would value your opinion on the business that I've just started and I'm really excited about. Or it could well be that I don't know if this is going to be of interest to you, but I'd really I know you're a really good friend, and you've always said to me in the past, contact me anytime there's anything I can help you with. Well, I wondered if you could help me, because I'm absolutely sure that you're going to be able to help me when we sit down and talk through the business that I'm actually really, really excited about. So value your opinion and help approach are two really quite nice approaches, very soft approaches that you can use with maybe people that you perceive, I use that in inverted commas, are more successful than you are. And then, of course, you've got the business approach. And these are the sorts of people that you would speak to who are very business-minded. Business people that are really entrepreneurial, always really excited about looking at other opportunities, always really excited about looking at other business opportunities and making money, and are really open-minded to be having a look at that, because they're the sorts of people that I'm absolutely sure would be open-minded to come and take a look. And of course there's other approaches as well, and there are many different other approaches, because it depends actually whether you're connecting with people that you know or people that you don't know, and we always start with people that we know from our who do we know list, because actually in general they are more forgiving, and they are more likely for you to actually get in front of them very, very quickly. I mean, 15 years into the business now, I'm contacting people from a cold market. So, the approach that I may use, which is talking about other, is that I might speak to somebody that I don't know very well, got into a conversation with them, give them a quick call, and may get into the conversation that may go around something like this. We met in, I'm just giving you a quick call. Is it okay to talk? Yes, that's great. We met in Costa Coffee earlier today. And, you expressed an interest in knowing a little bit more about, what it was I do, because obviously you're looking to develop another income stream alongside what you're currently doing here cost of coffee. Well, I wonder if we could get, I wonder if I could spare a couple of minutes talking to you a little bit about where you're at right now, what it is that you're looking for, and what attracted you to, to want to know more when we spoke earlier today. And, but other approaches, but that's cold market. So, there's lots of different other approaches as well that you can use when you're contacting cold market, or maybe asking for a referral. But really, essentially, when you're new in the business and you haven't even scratched the surface of your warm market, that is the area that we always coach when we first start. So if Mike's back, is he?
Let's see. How does that sound?
Still a bit mute.
It's honestly, it's not my throat.
How weird is that? Well, why don't you go on to the next slide, and then we will have a look at the next slide, and then see if it's a slide for if Alison is going to come into her own. Bear with us, everybody. You're doing really well. Sorry about tonight's technology. Is this where Alison's going to do a slot, Mikey?
If you could do one more slide, Alison was going to chip in on slide 7.
Okay, great. No worries. Okay, so we have profiled the person that we're going to make contact with. We've made contact, and it's pretty likely that if it's warm market, it's pretty likely that you're going to be able to get in front of them for what we call a one-to-one. Now, I don't really use the word one-to-one with my prospect on the phone, because I always say to them, listen, why don't we get together for a cup of coffee? I'll put some more information in front of you, and you can see, I'll share with you a little bit about the company, who we are, what we do, and what's on offer, and then you can make the right decision. You can decide whether or not this is something that you'd like to know more about. So I never use the word one-to-one with the prospects, because in forever terms, I think it's just jargon. But we know what a one-to-one is, but our prospects don't. So I always shy away from using necessarily those words one-to-one with the prospect. But we all know what a one-to-one is in the business. And what it is an opportunity to get some initial, and I use this word with the prospect, some initial information in front of them. And what that does, the word initial, implies that actually, after we've had a cup of coffee, there could well be some more information. So it's the first part of the information gathering stage, and it's a really important part, and it's an important part not to miss. It is not profile contact sign up. It is not profile contact BP sign up. The cycle is contact, show, business presentation, register, planning, etc. So it's a really important part of the process, because our mind is a filtering process, and actually it could take 4 or 5 times to present the prospect with some information for them to get and to make a buying decision. And I remember years ago when I was on a marketing course that actually somebody needs to see an advert on TV 7 times before they actually make a buy-in decision. So if you think about our own process, you'll have contacted them, you'll have shown them some initial information, you may well have taken them to a BP. So there's at least 3 little taps of information before they actually get to that stage. So it's really important that we put this process in. And as I say, it's an opportunity for you to get some information in front of the person and share a little bit about the company, who we are, what we do, and what is on offer for them. Now, you also might want to think about being prepared when you go to one-to-one. So it may well be that, personally, myself, I do a lot of cold market. So actually, when I do a one-to-one, it's usually online. So the preparation that I need is that I need obviously a good internet connection, and I need the one-to-one downloaded from Forever Knowledge on my system ready. I might actually even have a brochure in front of me, and I certainly will have the date of the next business presentation that that is going to be coming up in the area. So I would be prepared with that. Now, if I was out and about doing a one-to-one, I would have my diary with me. I would have a really lovely pen with me. I would have a brochure, one of the brochures, the brochure with John Curtis on, the business brochure, if you like. I would have probably a pup pack in the car waiting. I would have a product brochure with me. And I would have, again, all the list of the business presentations with me. So that if somebody, I needed to leave some information with somebody, or they hadn't quite, weren't quite ready yet, I would have, and they were interested, they may not be interested in the business, but interested in the products, I would have all the necessary bits of information with me that I could then start to drop into their lap, drop into their lap at any one stage. So, from the tools point of view, if you're using a laptop or you're using an iPad, you need to make sure that they're fully loaded with battery, that you've got downloaded the one-to-one from the Forever Knowledge site on there. You've got yourself a pen, a diary, and all the things that I've just talked about. It's really important that you prepare and you bring with you the tools that you need in order to make that as successful and stress-free as possible. Now, how to top and tail? Wow. Personally, I would, if you're brand new in the business, there is absolutely no doubt about it. I would encourage every single one of you to do the first 5 one-to-ones with your sponsor or your upline manager. And that is because they will coach you on the language that they use. They will coach you how to go through a one-to-one, how to do a one-to-one, and also they are a third-party credibility when you're first setting out. They're pretty rock steady. They probably don't, things don't faze them very much. They're going to be able to answer questions that may come up that you can hear how they get answered. So there's loads and loads of reasons, and I strongly urge you to not do one-to-ones on your own for the first 4 or 5 until you're confident and competent that you think, actually, you can take my hand away and I'm away. But how to top and tail a one-to-one, I'm not going through the whole thing, but I generally, when I top and tail, you're going to hear many, many different ways if you're sat in front of your sponsor doing them. I'm just going to share with you just a couple of tips that I use on a how to top and how to tail. And then you can take what you like, leave what you don't like. But, generally when I top a one-to-one, I will always find out, a little bit about what was really, what excited them about the conversation we had on the phone. And I always I go back and ask them where they're at right now. Tell me a little bit about where you're at right now, and, what sort of, work are you involved with if you don't know. And even when you think you do know and you ask some good quality questions, they will come out and start to say things to you that you can then drop very subtly into the one-to-one. So it's really important, I think, just to spend a couple of minutes finding out where they're at right now, finding out why they're excited, to meet up, and, what's happening in their life, where are they at? And, tell me a little bit about that. And you can spend 5 or so minutes finding out a little bit about that. And then I always thank them for, spending some, time. I always say the process is going to take about 20-25 minutes. And I always say to people, everybody I sit in front of, when they see the information, will fall into one of 3 places. They will either see the information, it ticks all the boxes, and they think, yeah, this is really exciting, I'm ready to move on to the next stage of information. Or it may well be that you're sat in front of, you may think at the end of the end of the information, well, maybe I can see what you're saying to me, but I need a bit more information. And that's good, because that's a signal to say to you that they need more information, which obviously is the business presentation. Or it may well be that you, as we go through the information, that it's not ticking any boxes for you, which is absolutely fine too. I said, but what I would encourage you to do as we go through the information is wear 2 hats. And as you wear 2 hats, as I said, you may well start to find that all the bit of information that you see starts to tick all the boxes, and it may well be that it's something for you. Or it may well be that it's not, and I'd like you to wear that second hat, because as we go through the information, you may well think, oh, excuse me 1 minute. Sorry, there was a crash going downstairs and something has broken. Or it may well be that as we go through the information, that the person that you may well think of one or two people that actually this information would be absolutely fantastic for, and you'd like to, to pass on their details so that that we could get that information in front of them. Now, all I do then is I literally go through the slides, and that is really, really important, because I don't add anything on. I literally go through the slides, because the actual topping and tailing are the most important bits of the one-to-one, because people can see the slides, they can read the slides, and you know what, you can't say the right thing, the wrong thing to the right person, and you can't say the right thing to the wrong person. So please don't get phased about getting everything tip-top right in the one-to-one, because actually they can read the information for themselves. But if you find out why they're sat in front of you, and you start to dip in throughout that one-to-one at the relevant sections in that one-to-one, and that's perhaps where the skill of this is, and that's why it's really key for you to sit with your sponsor to do it, you've absolutely nailed it. And then obviously how to tail is pretty straightforward, because on the last slide it says, and I take them back, I always say to people, I take you right back to when we very first started about 20 minutes ago, and I said to you, everybody sits in one of three places. Yes, and it says this on the slide. Yes, maybe, and please feel perfectly comfortable to say no. And actually, I do it exactly like that. Yes, maybe, and please feel perfectly comfortable to say no. And if it's a yes or a maybe, the next steps would be, that's absolutely fantastic. When can we next get together over the next 24, 48 hours so I can get the next stage of information in front of you? And actually, if that is a business presentation at a venue, I will get them to that first. That is my top priority. But if there isn't one within the next 24, 48 hours, my next approach is that I will do a business presentation with them at a one-to-one style. Okay, I never leave it more than a week, never leave it more than about 3 or 4 days to get that next stage of information with them, because their enthusiasm to want to see more information starts to tail the longer you leave it. Okay, so that's a really, really important point. If they say no, please feel perfectly comfortable to say no, and they say no, it's not for me, I'd say, well, I asked you to wear that second hat. I was just, as you went through the information, can you, is there one person that you can think of that actually falls into that? Well, yeah, actually, they would be really excited about this information. They're just looking for, something that they can run alongside what they do, or, they'd be looking for another couple of £100 a month. And I ask them that question to see if anybody pops into, I never say, does anybody? I'll just say, does one person pop into your mind right now who would be looking to maybe earn an extra £200 to £300 a month, maybe looking to run an income alongside what they currently do, maybe looking to downsize on their, their 5 days a week to 3 days a week. And I only ask for one referral, because when you ask them, do you know anyone, their mind opens up. But when you ask for one, they hone in on one specific one. So I hope that helps. And sorry, it's been a bit disjointed. So Mike's going to go on, and let's see if we can hear him.
Hello.
Still quite quiet.
Oh no. Well, I'm definitely unmuted. What I'll do is I'll just shout. Okay,
shout.
Okay. Yeah, just one more slide, then we'll hand over to Alison. Questions is really what you're going to get to. And as Tracy was saying, at the end, when you get to that yes, maybe, please feel perfectly comfortable to say no, you may actually not get a clear yes, no, or maybe. You may then get all the questions, and that's what this next page is all about. I think it's a worry for people often that they, especially if they're going in without their sponsor, and as we've already said, ideally you do your first 4 or 5 meetings with your sponsor. But if you're going in alone, the fear is often being asked a question that you don't know the answer to. And my first, I guess, piece of advice on that topic would be to be honest. And if you get stuck, don't try and answer a question that you don't feel qualified to answer. Just say, look, I'm not sure, I'll find out for you and I'll get back to you by the end of the afternoon. But please don't be tempted to answer questions you don't know the answer to properly. But in reality, you're probably only going to get asked 1 of 4 questions. And they usually revolve around, there's a 5th actually that I can think of, selling, pyramid selling, is it MLM, network marketing, is it Amway, Herbalife, Clean Easy? And the last one is probably a 5th question, is about time. You know, I don't know if I'll have enough time to do this business. Now we can handle each of those questions in turn and give you some brief responses, but all of them can be answered initially in 1 of 2 ways. The first is actually not to presume why they've asked that question, because you could quite easily be projecting your own perceptions onto that person. So if we take the first question, which is it selling? You're probably thinking, if you were nervous or cautious or new, that if somebody asks about selling, that they don't want to be involved because everyone hates selling. Well, that's the perception, but there are a few people, and possibly it's a minority, but there are quite a few people who actually like selling. So the response is, if you get the question, is it selling? Your first response should be, that's interesting. What makes you ask that? Because what that question will do is 1 of 2 things. First of all, it buys you a bit of time. Second of all, and more importantly, it actually gets to the root cause of why they've asked the question. Because if they are fearful of selling, or if they love sales, your response is going to be quite different. So that question gets you to a deeper level of understanding about why they've asked the question. So if you get stuck in any situation, a job interview or forever one-to-one or wherever it may be, just say, that's an interesting question. What makes you ask that? So that's the initial response. And you can apply that to selling, pyramids, MLM, Amway, the whole lot. And it's a really, really important way to handle initially that first question. Now, if, say it was selling and you said, oh, that's an interesting question, what makes you ask that? And they say, well, I hate selling, I couldn't sell, blah, blah, blah. Then it's the second response, which is a really neat thing to actually have in your tool bag, really. And we call it feel, felt, found. And what the feel, felt, found scenario does is actually guides people from one place quite seamlessly to a different place. So I know how you feel, John. When I heard it was to do with selling, I felt exactly like you are now. But what I've found is that it's not to do with selling. It's actually to do about recommending products that I really, really love. So I can put your mind at rest. So that's taking from somebody who doesn't like selling, saying that you understand, that you feel the same, you felt the same. But what you found with a bit more learning and a bit more education is that it's nothing to do with selling. It's about recommending products that you really love. So the feel, felt, found scenario is brilliant. So you can apply those 2 to any of the 4 listed questions. If people really probe and they want a bit more detail, selling we've already covered. You go down the recommendation route. And it's absolutely true. We're not looking for salespeople. We're looking for people who love our products, who want to recommend them with enthusiasm. So that is absolutely the right response. Pyramid selling, if people want more detail, ask them what they mean by pyramid selling. Often people don't even know what that term is. And once they've told you what they think pyramid selling is, you simply say, no, it's nothing like that. Pyramid sales is illegal, has been for many, many years. And we have the government's Investors in People award, and they don't give that to illegal pyramid schemes. And then the final question there about Amway, Herbalife, Clean Easy. I would be really clear with these people that all of those companies are fantastic companies. They have different products to us, and they maybe operate in a slightly different way, but in essence, we're all multi-level marketing companies. We're all highly regulated, and we've just got a product range which we hope they're going to fall in love with. So I wouldn't be negative about any of the network marketing, especially those ones, because they're all really good companies. Just say we're similar in some respects, but different in others. Why don't you have a look at the marketing plan and the products that lie behind Forever Living? So that's handling questions. I know there's one person in our team, a lady called Fiona Wormsley, who in the early days, she did little post-it postcards with responses to the 4 or 5 major questions, just so she had prompts in front of her, and that really, really helped her in the early days. So just write out a rough response to the common questions. So just to wrap up this slide, Fortune is in the follow-up. Hopefully at the end of your one-to-one, if your person has said yes, then obviously you'd get them registered. If they say no, you would steer them towards looking at products and asking for a referral. And if they're a maybe, that means they need more information. So you need, as you say, as Tracy said, you need to nail down a business presentation. And the key thing is to try and get that diarised before you leave. Now, if it is that you can't for some reason, or if it is that you've given them some information to look at in preference, whatever the situation, try and diarise a follow-up so you can see how they've got on looking at that information. If you leave the ball in their court, it makes it very tricky for them and for you as to know who's doing what next. So it's more comfortable for everyone if it's just clearly diarised when you're going to follow up. That's not them committing to anything. It's not them saying yes. It's just saying, look, have a look at the extra information I send. Why don't I give you a call on Friday and see if you've got any more questions? And I think Tracy covered that last point. Never tell the prospects that there's a presentation every week, because again, you want to try and share information for their benefit when their enthusiasm is high. They'll be more receptive to information. If you leave it 3 weeks and you say to them, look, oh, don't worry, if it's a bit awkward this week, come next week. It can easily be 2 or 3 weeks, and then when they get to a presentation, or if they get to the presentation, they've got to do a lot of learning again and get their both their enthusiasm and their information levels back up to a high level. So just use the tools. If they can't make the presentation on a Wednesday, say, look, are you free on Thursday? Let's do it over the internet. So you use the various tools that we have available to make sure you get the information in front of them as quickly as you possibly can. So, sorry if I have rambled a little this evening. It's your opportunity now, really, to do a bit of thinking about what you've learned about profiling, to think about how you've maybe scripted things in the past, and maybe if there's anything you've learned tonight, which maybe you'll do things slightly different. And maybe thinking about your preparation. Are you doing enough profiling? Are you carrying your profile sheets around with you so you can actually use them during the day if you've got a few spare minutes at work? So have a think about any feedback or comments you got for us. What I'm going to do now is just unmute Alison Lister, who's been working very hard in the first couple of weeks. Alison, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Mike. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear, probably louder and clearer than you can hear me.
Yeah, you're still very quiet.
I'm shy, Alison.
Yeah, we'll believe that one.
Yeah. So what have you been up to in the last couple of weeks, Alison?
Right, the last couple of weeks, I've had, I suppose I would describe it as a real shift, because although I've been in the business with Dave, my husband, for, well, we've just done nearly 3 years in the business, and we built a supervisor business a couple of years ago, but actually then we didn't do very much. Just we kept on with our 4 CCs every month, but weren't really building a team. And I needed to look at why that wasn't happening. One of the things I found is, I'm busy with my day job. I work long hours, as does my husband. What I found is I wasn't planning my business in properly. And if I had planned my day job in the same way I was planning my forever role, I probably would have ended up actually not doing very well at work. So what I found is, because I was busy, I was thinking, well, I'll do certain things in a week, and then I didn't plan them in properly, so I didn't do them. So one of the big things I did is I put a plan together with Tracy, and then I really planned out in detail some pockets of time every week where I had some time to work. And I didn't just think about them, which is what I'd done before. I put them in my diary, because in my day job, if it's not in my diary, it doesn't happen. I have a lot of meetings, I work long hours, but actually if it's not planned in, it doesn't happen. And what was happening with Forever, I wasn't planning it in properly. So if something came up, it didn't happen. So now I've got pockets of time where I know I can work my Forever business, and I'm booking either calls into that where I'm prospecting, or booking one-to-ones and BPs in. And actually the difference it's made it's only been 3 weeks, but the things that are now happening, I'm starting to feel like the business is coming back into momentum. And I think that's a phrase that's used quite a lot, but until it starts to happen, you don't really know what it means. And suddenly, rather than, just be thinking about one person you want to contact, you're talking to lots of different people, and there's people at different stages of the business cycle. So I actually feel, for the first time in a couple of years, we're working through the business cycle properly. And I've got people at, an early stage, people ready to come to a BP, people considering whether or not they're going to join the business. And that's all happening at the same time. So that's really exciting.
What happens, Alison, if when you've got a bubbling kind of pipeline, if you get a no from somebody, how does that affect you now?
Oh, well, that's the brilliant thing, Mike. And to be honest, I've heard about this before, but I didn't really believe it. When somebody says no to me now, I just think, Grant, that's lovely, thanks very much. And I'm on to the next person, because I have too many things going on at the moment, whereas before, a no could cripple me for 3 weeks longer, particularly with somebody I felt I'd invested a bit of time in, or somebody who I thought would be fantastic in the business, and I could see it, but they couldn't. Whereas now, if somebody says no, first of all, I'm really grateful they've said no, because I know they're a no, and it's still a no for now, because I think they might still come back later. But I'm ready to move on to the next person. Whereas if you're only doing one person every couple of weeks, a no absolutely cripples you.
Yeah.
And I was told that right at the start, but until you experience it and then realize that actually a no doesn't matter, I'm on to the next person, which is great. And if you have lots of stuff happening and different people at different stages of the business cycle, it actually doesn't matter. because you're on to the next person.
Thank you, Alison. Was there anything else you wanted to share about doing more and being in momentum?
Well, I think the planning side of it and getting your diary in order is a really big part, because your organisation is really important. But one thing that I have found at one-to-ones, and this came out of when I was speaking to people over the phone, I booked some sessions in with Tracy to listen to my calls, because I had got myself to a point where I felt I couldn't do it. So I booked in some calls with Tracy so she could listen to me on the phone. And one of the things she did say is I wasn't very decisive about, when we'd meet or where we'd meet. And what I've started doing now as part of my profiling, because I do profile everybody I ring, I'm also, if I know where they live or where they work, I'm noting that down, but also putting in a couple of likely places that I know will be good for a one-to-one. Because quite often, well, when people say yes, because I think when you start again, or when you start for the first time, you're delighted when somebody says yes to a one-to-one, which is what you want. But then when they say, where are we meeting? And if you don't know where you're meeting, you look really indecisive.
Yeah.
So, like, I suppose a little tip I would say to people is think about who you're speaking to, either where they work, where they live, and find a couple of good places in those areas where you can meet them, and then you'll know. You can give them a location, and you sound then really decisive about what you're doing.
That's brilliant, Alison. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mike.
Well done. I'm going to try a little experiment. Is my microphone any better now?
No, Mike.
No. I just thought if I turned my camera on, possibly the mic could roar into action. Okay, I'm going to look at the chat box and just see if there are any burning questions from anyone. It's about a couple of minutes to 9. Lots of chat about Mike being very quiet. John Smith talking about Go For No by Richard Fenton, which is a fabulous book. Thank you, John. Really talking about reframing the whole process of getting a no, and viewing a no as a good thing and taking you one step closer to a yes. It's particularly good if you know your statistics. So if you know that on average you get 10 no's before you get one yes, then every single no you get, you're just taking one step closer to getting a yes. So thank you, John. A great book, a great recommendation. David Lister, your camera's not on. I've got a feeling I've got a dodgy camera and mic, so apologies to everyone. At the moment, no other burning questions. So I will assume that...
Oh, Mike.
Yep.
There is one question from Helen. She said she's contacted some people via Facebook Messenger and had no reply. Should I message them again? I don't have their number. I think, Helen, firstly I would ask the question is, what are you saying when you say you've contacted some people via Facebook Messenger? How have you contacted them? What have you said? Because my experience in all this is that if you don't have a number for somebody and you're trying to connect with them, sound really, excited. Listen, I know we're connected on Facebook, but I don't have any contact details for you. There's something I'm really excited that I want to talk to you about. I wondered if we could connect on the phone, but I don't have your number. Would you be happy to share it with me? So actually not making a sort of a script up on Facebook and then blasting it out, because in my experience, you don't get very far with this. The best way I feel, I don't know if Mike's nodding, is to actually see if you can get the telephone number out of them, or ask them how is best to contact you other than Facebook.
Thank you, Tracy.
Is that okay?
My camera must be working if you can see my head nodding.
Yeah, we can see your head nodding. Is that okay? Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. That's okay. Fantastic.
Okay, last skim. No. Okay, So just before we close the call tonight, a few reminders. Get profiling, get at least 10 done, and then carry those around with you. So when you've got a few spare minutes, you can actually make some telephone calls. Try and get 2 or 3 one-to-ones in if you can this week, and always use your mentor. If they're not available, go upline and see if you can get your manager to help you with your initial meetings. There's a great training video on the iGlobal website.
Watch him here, Phil.
First steps to manager, you've just missed one, and it was a cracker across in Manchester. Lindsay was helping out. So I'm not sure when the next one is, but for sure there's going to be one in the north fairly soon, because Lindsay's been asked to run one. So I'd imagine within the next couple of months, there'll certainly be one in the north. A reminder about the smart pods, about £2-3 a month, and you've got high quality video tutorials on absolutely every topic you can imagine. That's through Adam May's Group Dynamic Smart Pods. And then you've got a whole host of training. And I remember speaking to Phil, my sponsor, early on, probably, I don't know, maybe 8-9 months into our journey with Forever. And I asked him what the most important training was to go to. And Phil just said with a big smile, the next one. So as a good tip, it doesn't really matter. You'll learn loads from any of the trainings. So scan the list and just see which is the first available training you can actually commit to. You'll meet other people, you'll learn loads about aloe in general. So yeah, stick it down. All bar the accountancy one. You won't learn much about aloe vera at the accountancy training. So that's us, folks. Sorry we've overrun a little, and thank you so much to Tracy and to Alison for bailing me out. Have a great week. Take care.